Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me tonight to talk about, well, life's little lessons. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends, send me a message. Thanks for joining me tonight to talk about more of life's little lessons. I kind of just showed up over the past week, some today actually, just kind of be paying attention a little bit and observing some of the stuff that was kind of going around me as life was going on. But first, a note about the phenomenon, maybe you've heard of it, maybe not, called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, or frequency illusion, it's also called. It's a cognitive bias that affects our perception of the frequency of objects, words, or events, and it involves selective attention and confirmation bias. It's also called the red car bias. So, you always wanted a red car and you don't see very many, so you buy a red car and then suddenly all you see are red cars. And it's actually how another name for it, the Bader-Meinhof phenomena. And how that plays into things, and it involves selective attention, right? And so you start thinking red, you look for red, you notice red. And how that plays in tonight is, past couple of episodes I did talked about ageism and age bias and the language around that and how it's all around us. And after I did those, I really kind of got a little more in tune to it. I hear them sometimes and noted it, but after I did those episodes and really started listening, and I realized that it's just in my face constantly. And I know what it is, right? Like I said, it's the Bader-Meinhof effect or the red car effect. But what has surprised me is how many times I had been unconsciously being exposed to it and kind of filtering it out. Now, it's good that I wasn't focusing on it, but subconsciously, I clearly was keeping track of it because, well, that's what our subconscious mind does. That's how it gets feedback from society on things. It's always listening to things, comparing them to our own thoughts, and modifying our beliefs. So, multiple times a day, sometimes dozens of times a day, there would be ageist statements made or assumptions made, and they were registering with my subconscious, obviously, and building up this tremendously biased model in my brain, which then affected both my conscious thoughts and my expectations about myself and aging. And so I guess the straw was this morning. I get a daily financial summary newspaper, and I don't really read it. I read it partially for the finances, but really kind of as an indicator for the economy overall and how things are going. And I know the author, as a matter of fact, and I know he respects his elders a lot. He's from the Indian continent, and so, and yet still right there as a kind of a humorous note to close today's newsletter, there is this whole ageist story. And the context was kind of, a caution to not take old people's health advice because their diets are often very unhealthy and they don't exercise. And the only reason they're old is, according to the experts, is good genes and 100 years of luck. That's what the story was. And now the story was based upon an actual story in the Guardian newspaper, and it was under the category of aging. It was written by Nicola Davis, their science correspondent, or a science correspondent. And to answer your question, yes, I will be writing all three groups, my friend and his newsletter, and the Guardian editorial staff and the letters page, and of course, Nicola Davis. The article then referenced additional experts who echo the same false story we've been discussing about distorted memory and genes and how you have no control over it, and all the common lies that amongst other places completely pervade the medical system and the medical treatment. And it was just amazing that this sort of false narrative, and many other similar false narratives in medicine, as well as how you even deal with the whole aging population, continue to propagate, even though there's ample evidence to the contrary. I mean, to the tune of hundreds, if not thousands, of studies that disprove a lot of this. And it was just an unbelievable piece of ageist writing, and somehow managed to skip all the authors that had contradictory opinions that didn't match common knowledge. Now, as Mark Twain once said, why is it that common sense is so uncommon? Clearly, the same thing can be said about common knowledge. Why is it that things that have been disproven for years. And it's not just this. There's lots of things like that, particularly when they come to medicine, but they just never go away. But the related topic to this is another one of our related regular topics. So I had this whole ageist thing going on my mind, and just have been being more aware of it over the past few weeks. But then another one of our regular topics is, how you can have a positive impact on people around you. And so, of course, there's two ways you can get examples of that. One is that something positive happens or you're a positive influence somewhere. But then life provided me with one of those contradictory examples. It was actually rather stunning in the magnitude tonight, a little before showtime here. I was waiting in line to check out at a store that has two adjacent checkout lines that face each other. And very often people will form one line in the middle so that, when the first person in line can go to the next available register and the whole process moves faster. Well, there was a very impatient person comes up behind me and says, well, which line are you in? And I explained that there's often one line and there's one line today, and so everyone can check out faster. Well, they weren't pleased with the answer. They kept kind of like trying to push me along or push me to one side or the other. And finally they say, well, if you can't choose, I'm just going to go around you and get into that line. And they said with, great bluster and annoyance. My response was simply, go for it, which they did, again, with much eye rolling and outward annoyance and had to be the center of everything. Now, unfortunately, they had just called for more cashiers to come up front. So right after their whole little exposition there, two more registers, two more lanes did open, and the rest of the people quickly moved to short lines and checked out before the person did who had to get in that one line, causing them even more angst and outward annoyance. So the lessons of this are many. To start with, right at the very beginning, they could have considered that a different approach might have served them and everyone better. But they had no interest in looking for a different way. They were locked into their belief system that there are two registers, there are going to be two lines, and that's that, and you're just annoying me. And so they missed a whole different way of looking at life. Now, they may have been driven by the chance of winning by picking the faster line. I see that very often. People jump from line to line, trying to beat everybody else. But if everyone had cooperated, the downside is they would have been second no matter what. But they figured by forcing their way ahead, they might have won and been first to the next people that had gotten checked out. But instead, they lost to pretty much every other person behind them. And because they all went to shorter lines, and that just seemed to anger them even more. They could have accepted personal responsibility for this, but judging from the looks I was getting from them, it was pretty clear that I was being held accountable for their bad luck. And the last one's really insidious, and it's a double-edged sword. By not accepting the results of your own actions and then blaming others for your own choices, you never have the opportunity to improve your decision process, and even worse, typically feel put upon because someone else did something to you. This is a very quick way to get yourself into a really bad state in many different ways, because you might convince yourself that the world is against you, or rather that, everyone's just kind of like ganging up on you to make your life worse. But in reality, it's you yourself who are operating against your own best interests. But since you wouldn't even consider that, you never change your ways, and the cycle just continues. While I often talk about how we have the opportunity, each and every one of us, to spread goodness to those around us, realistically, we can also spread confrontation and discord if that's how we act. I was doing nothing, yet I was attacked for it. And the result was not only was it unpleasant and uncomfortable for me, but the other person likely set themselves up for more annoyance for the remainder of their day and lost out on a learning opportunity, and who knows what other havoc they caused. They're mad and driving in traffic, so they're yelling at people, and they're on this death spiral that started out of their own actions. Again, and as always, each of us has the ability to make the world a better place in both small and large ways. But sometimes that isn't good enough for someone else, and they're determined to spread bad feelings. In those cases, the best we can do is to try and mitigate it not encourage it, try to learn from it. So that's it for the evening. We all have the opportunity to be an agent of positive change and make things better. And I would encourage you, try and do that even in small situations. There were probably 8 people or more affected by that one person's behavior. And it could have been a good time, and I was actually surprised at their aggressiveness. But instead of making it 8 people better off, they decided to spread bad feelings. I would encourage you, look at the good side, say, even if it was an unusual situation, let's see what good we can find out of it and play off the good parts of it. Your homework, always optional, is to be alert for ageist remarks in the news and ads, conversations at work, etc. You don't have to do anything yet. Just start to become aware of them. You'd be surprised how many actually are floating around. Extra points then, if you take a couple of those situations and start reframing the comment in a more positive way. Again, be an agent for positive change, even if something as socially embedded and acceptable as ageism or age bias. We can change it if we can stop considering it as an okay conversation, one little comment at a time. That's it for the night. Remember, please remember the many wars that are going on in the world. I think I've mentioned I also participate in a bilingual rosary, and that's one of our regular intentions at the rosary. There's wars just going on for, none of them are for good reasons, and not just Ukraine, in the Mideast, in Africa. Now things are heating up in South America again. Pick a place, not Philippines, in the East Indian Ocean area, Southeast Asia. It's just everybody seems to want to get in a fight with everybody else. If you can and you're able, for Ukraine stuff, still have the page up, ukr7.com. Links to donation sites for there. If Ukraine is not a place that we particularly want to donate to, World Central Kitchen, they operate in many different areas and are very relevant, and all they do, the primary thing they do is use local food supplies to get the food back out to the people following a disaster. Awesome organization. We talked about them before, we have episodes on them. But the big thing really, and if you don't want to donate or can't donate, that's fine too. Like I said, be an agent of positive change. We all can make the world a little better place. Just a simple smile to somebody. When you look outside yourself and look at the rest of the world, it changes your perspective on the world and helps you understand other people. And it just gives you more power to make the world a nicer place. And that's a nice power to have, actually. Remember, one of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others. So if you can and you're able, UKR7, WCK.org, just smile at somebody, make their day a little better. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting and useful, please pass it along. Please hit that subscribe button and the like button. If not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.